We build prototypes to get feedback. That's basically the only reason why we do that. It helps us to understand what part of a product works and what doesn't, and where do we actually go with our solution afterwards. So testing is essential for developing ideas, transforming them into prototypes, and then at that point get feedback in order to start iterating. Because testing means going back to your end users, presenting or letting them experience what you've developed, what you came up with, and to see whether they understand where you're going with your solution. I think that's the most essential part. So when you start testing wireframes, for example, which are the architecture of your software solution, which just focus on the functionality and doesn't have any design, any colors in it yet, it's very important to present them to your users and let them experience them without you explaining it. That's very essential to understand, okay, is it self-explanatory? And that's what good UX is all about. Seeing whether they understand where the solution guides them from A to Z. And what you want to do then is observe. You want to see, how does your user interact with your solution? Where do questions pop up? Where do you get feedback, and write everything down? And also see how your solution makes your user feel. And then take that feedback and start iterating and start integrating it. And don't get too attached. I think that's also one of the big learnings for us, is never get attached to a prototype. If your prototype isn't failing, it's not pushing far enough. And that's very helpful to really get good results. Always iterating. Throw things away if they don't work. You can make them better afterwards. How many times a day are you visiting websites? Are you using applications where you actually are searching for specific things you want to do, which you want to interact with? That's all part of the user experience, and all of that you can eliminate with good user testing. If you provide an application or a prototype to the users and give them tasks to actually find something on their website. And if it's easy to find, if it takes them very limited amount of time to find it, then it's a good user experience. If it's not, if they take, I don't know, seconds, minutes to find things, or even not finding them at all, then you know it's not a good user experience. So this is a very easy way to improve your products as well. Once you start observing your users using your prototype, the next step would be asking questions. And once you ask questions, what's really important is that you stay neutral. Don't imply anything. Don't ask closed questions. So does that make you feel good? Rather ask question, how does this make you feel? How do you feel when you look at the screen, and what do you urge to do? Yeah, things like that. Really seek stories, seek interactions, but don't ask closed questions that imply the answer already. Another important thing is you've spent a lot of time building your prototype, so you're an expert, you're totally in the project, and don't forget about that. And that's why you want to take that prototype and bring it to somebody who's totally out of context, who hasn't worked on this project. And once you take your prototype out of context and present it to somebody who has no idea what you've been working on, if it then works, if people then understand what you're trying to do, you're on a very good way. So that's why you need to have that feedback of people who are not involved in the process and in the project at all. Another point I want to tap into is start testing with a very low fidelity version of your mockup. Start testing storyboards and start testing wireframes, which focus on the functionality first, because this is where you get to know if the brain of your solution actually works, if that actually makes sense. If you present a high fidelity mockup, which is visually well designed, people will judge it on the color of buttons, and you don't want that. You want to get the feedback on the functionality. So testing is a really, really great tool of understanding what works with your solution and where you need to start iterating. Don't get too attached to prototypes. yeah, see testing as a big benefit of pushing your product into the right direction and being able to launch a solution on the market that actually is desired and wanted by your end customers.